Welcome to All Pro Football Data. My name is Jim Coburn, and today's episode we're talking about Christian Wilkins to the Las Vegas Raiders. He recently inked a $110 million contract, making him the third highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL based on an average per year money, because he's obviously not going to get all that money year one. The way they did his contract, they kind of backlogged it a little bit, so his cap hit is kind of less this year compared to the next couple of years. But in this video, we're going to look at his profile pre-draft. So a lot of times what a player does back in college can tell you a little bit what they're going to do in the NFL. Then we're also going to look at his actual NFL production and kind of see if this was a good deal or not for the Raiders. So first off, looking at his defensive market share data. If you're new to the channel, new to the stuff that I do, you can pause the video real quick. But based on his data, he had a 76 percentile solo tackle market share production score. He had a 56 percentile sack market share production score, and then a 64 percentile tackle for loss production score. As you can see with his data, he was not a big disruptor of the backfield, which we're going to get to a little bit later. But he was good. If you look at his data, he pretty much is in line with what most starters do for the most part, Pro Bowlers to a certain extent. But he's not a very big disruptive defensive tackle based on his data. But neither here nor there. Let's look at some other data for him. So looking at some more market share data for him, looking at like forced fumble market share, pass deflection market share, and then interception market share. Things that you don't necessarily see out of a defensive tackle, but it's nice to see them produce in those different kinds of things. It's always nice to see when a defensive tackle gets a pick or makes a play on the football. And when you look at these numbers, for the most part, he was average in terms of forced fumble production, average in terms of interception production. But look at his pass deflection production. He was definitely in the 90 percentile area there for his production in that particular area. So very good production from that standpoint in terms of other things. Not the most important things. Usually solo tackles, sacks, and TFL are the biggest numbers you want to look at, but his extra stuff is definitely in line with what you want to see out of a player like him. Now, when you look at his mass density athleticism scores, so this is basically how athletic he is for his size. This is how he tested. He was 79 percentile in terms of explosiveness, 84 percentile in terms of speed for his size, then 87 percentile in terms of flexibility for his size. Essentially, he had Pro Bowl level athleticism traits. Didn't have all pro level, but did have Pro Bowl athleticism traits. And the only real question marks that he had, the only real negatives to his profile, came down to his context or adjusted production score. So you can pause the video real quick to kind of get an idea of this stuff. But adjusted production looks at their age, strength of competition, strength of team, those types of things. And the biggest question mark with Wilkins was that he was in the 23rd percentile in terms of his age. He had a 74 percentile MSA rating, and then a 79 percentile pass rating. The pass rating includes all of the production numbers, the forced fumbles, the interceptions, etc. And then the MSA rating takes that stuff out and just looks at the meat and potatoes stuff. And when you look at these numbers, if you look at the starter average, Pro Bowl average, and All Pro average, he isn't quite near any of those numbers for him. So that is kind of the concern. He was an older prospect. He was a 24-year-old rookie to a certain extent. And he, as an older prospect, you typically have some concerns about their overall output in the NFL long term. But he was a good athlete, so that's all I can really say is he was a good athlete. So he tested and kind of looked like a starting defensive tackle in terms of what he was coming out of college at Clemson. Now, when we get to his NFL production, so again, a lot of you guys are going to go, I don't give a crap about his pre-draft profile. What did he do at the NFL level? And based on these numbers, which this is different things such as the amount of games he started, ability to blitz, how many blitzes he had compared to other defensive tackles, How many hurries, quarterback hurries, quarterback knockdowns, sacks, pressures, combined tackles, missed tackle percentage, sacks per game, sacks divided by pressures, which is what I like to call the baby making metric, because if you get a lot of penetration and you're not getting any sacks, what are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And then of course you have the pressure percentage, which is how many pressures they had per snap. And then of course the backfield. Backfield number is just a collective number looking at the total impact of the defensive tackle in terms of production of sacks and pressures. The tackle or TACK number looks at total impact of tackling production and missed tackle percentage. And then the DTRAT is the defensive tackle rating, which is a metric I've created, which is the overall score of the backfield production plus the tackle production to give an overall production score for Wilkins. Now, what can you say about his overall production? Well, this is what you can say. He's been a 90 percentile defensive tackle, 97 and up, since 2021 until now. The biggest thing that has popped out to me is his missed tackle percentage and overall tackling ability kind of went down in 2023, but his sacks and his pressures went sky high last year. And his quarterback knockdowns also went sky high last year. So even though he had 9 sacks last year, which is impressive, he doesn't really produce like this. At the college level, he was above average, but not elite in terms of sacks and tackles for loss. He gets to the NFL level, he's not elite when it comes to sacks or tackles for loss until his contract year, and then he is. But that's the biggest thing about Wilkins. One other concern is age. So age does not get talked about a lot in terms of discussions on players, because I don't think people really understand it or don't really look at the numbers. But this is typically, and I'm going to expand this number, by the way. I'm doing a lot of extra data work in the background to get my numbers back up to snuff. But this is a pretty large sample. This is from 2005 to 2017. It's looking at 80 to 99 percentile production defensive tackles. So basically tackles that produced in terms of tackles and sacks and tackles for loss, etc., at the 80 to 90 percentile range. Basically elite to near elite production. And when you look at the total number of, you isolate for the ages, in terms of the average age, or at least the total number of prospects of a particular age in terms of producing at an above average rate, or at least an elite or near elite rate. Most defensive tackles peak at age 26, and then they decline at age 27. They typically stay in the same range between 28, 29, 30, and 31, and then they usually have another decline at 32, 33, 34, and 35 until they're basically out of the NFL, unless they're like a Hall of Fame player. Looking at Wilkins, he's more so at 28, had a season that is not really typical of most defensive tackles in terms of the last, again, from 2005 to 2017. Pretty big sample, but again, this is pretty much like at most positions. Most positions, they peak around age 25 to 26, and then they decline, and then typically by age 29 to 30, you start to decline even further. So Wilkins, again, is 28, about to go on 29. So you're paying him money, top 3 money, to expect him to produce at the same rate he produced last year when he's only done it one time in his career. And he typically hasn't been much of a sack guy last year at all. It's a little concerning. Those are my general concerns with it. Now, I will tell you this. The Raiders aim to end his contract at the tail end of his potential decline. So, again, the Raiders are going to have him from age 29, 30, 31, and then 32. 32 is typically when most defensive tackles kick the bucket, so to speak, for the most part, in terms of being really impactful. So the Raiders are essentially paying him on the back half of his career, um, if you will, in terms of his production. So you would hope that he would replicate what he did last year, obviously. But again, most of his production isn't really that. So overall outlook, though, Christian Wilkins has produced like a top 16 to 32 defensive tackle from 2021 until 2023, with a peak in backfield disruption in 2023. Now, keep in mind, backfield disruption is not the end all be all thing, but you don't pay a guy like this top three money unless you're expecting him to get the quarterback and be disruptive in the backfield. And my concern is with his age, as well as his consistency as a pass rusher. He was never a consistent pass rusher at the college level. He was never a consistent pass rusher at the NFL level. So now you're paying him all this money to be that now because of one season. That is the biggest concern here with Wilkins from that perspective. Now, does he have the athleticism to do that? I would say so. He has Pro Bowl level athleticism coming out. I don't think any of that's really diminished. Of course, he is getting older, but still, I mean, he still has that. But Wilkins had 9 sacks last year, but he usually averaged 2.875 a year when you take out his 2023 season. So Wilkins could be a contract year maven. A guy that produced at a high level, gets paid, and then goes back to performing how he usually performed. Which the way he usually performed was still a good defensive tackle. He 97 percentile in terms of his DT rating, but he's not exactly putting up that quarterback pressures that you're paying him to do. I mean, I would assume that's what you're trying to do. So that's the general concern here with him. In general, the signing is assuming that he continues his pay from 2023 while ignoring the rest of his career. That's I don't know how you can justify that, guys. Now, again, he's the third highest paid defensive tackle. 2 years from now, he might end up becoming the 10th highest paid as contracts increase and increase and increase. But I just gotta say, man, he is he a good player? Yes, he has produced like a good player, but that's a lot of money for somebody that, statistically speaking, is not going to consistently give you 9 sacks per year. And if he gives you 3 sacks a year, you got a good starter. You're basically paying a guy to be a good starter, top 3 money at the position. So that's the main concern with him overall. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Jim Coburn. You can find my work at Geometrics on X, formerly known as Twitter. Also check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/jcoburn. I'm still getting over a bit of a cold that I've had for probably about a week now. So that's why my voice is the way it is. But I just thank you guys so much for supporting the channel and everything else you guys do. Like, comment, and subscribe. Do you feel like this deal is going to work out for the Raiders? Do you feel like the 9 sacks wasn't an enigma and that he's actually going to put in the work and maybe average 6 sacks a year for 3 years or so? But let me know in the comment section below. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.